Hello and welcome. I'm Ijoma Onyato. Tonight, terrorists kill 9 soldiers in overnight gun battle in Gudumbali area of Borno State. Several other soldiers declared missing. Northern governors adopt federal government's National Livestock Transformation Plan, orders member states to implement entire roadmap. International Committee of the Red Cross declares 22,000 Nigerians missing in a decade of conflict in the northeast. And British Prime Minister Boris Johnson denies lying to the Queen over advice he gave her on Parliament suspension.
On Business News tonight, federal government approves $5.3 billion for Ibadan Kano Standard Rail project.
And on sports news tonight, Nigeria Football Federation confirms return of Super Eagles coach Salisu Yusuf after a 1-year ban.
And from Abuja, President Muhammadu Buhari promises not to inflict more hardship on Nigerians regarding price of fuel, says he will eliminate corruption in the oil and gas sector.
We begin tonight from Borno State in northern Nigeria, where 9 soldiers have lost their lives in a gun battle with Boko Haram insurgents in defense of the nation's territorial integrity. The slain soldiers, who were members of Operation Lafia Dole in the theater of war, lost their lives in Gudumbali town, with about 20 of them still said to be missing. The soldiers were reportedly ambushed by the militants in a village called Granda, engaging them overnight from Monday to the early hours of Tuesday. Sources say some of the soldiers later fled, leading to the overpowering of the military base, during which 9 soldiers fell in battle, 7 out of which were killed. Sources say a fuel tanker and other vehicles of different brands were carted away by the insurgents. It's not clear if some of the missing soldiers were abducted as insinuated, as only the outcome of a search party and a head count could determine that. The bodies of those killed have been evacuated and deposited at the military hospital in Maiduguri. Meanwhile, the Northern Governors Forum is not unaware of the security situation in the region, particularly in the northeast. But at their meeting today in Kaduna State, the 19 Northern Governors took a firm position on another security issue by adopting the federal government's National Livestock Transformation Plan to end the clashes between farmers and herders. They also agreed to a resolution which is to implement the entire roadmap of the plan in all member states.
The increasing clashes between farmers and herders have recently become worrisome, especially in wetland areas of the Middle Belt, north central and southern parts of the country. Such violent conflict between the two parties who are prominent in the country's agricultural sector have escalated in recent times and are spreading southward, thereby threatening the nation's security and stability. On Tuesday, September the 10th, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, inaugurated the National Livestock Transformation Plan at the Gongoshi Grazing Reserve in Mayo Belwa local government area of Adamawa State. The federal government believes that the plan, which is to be implemented in 7 pilot states of Adamawa, Benue, Kaduna, Plateau, Nasarawa, Taraba, and Zamfara, will develop Nigeria's livestock sector and also help to reduce the incessant conflict between herders and farmers. With the launching of the program in Adamawa some days ago, the Northern Governors at an emergency meeting in Kaduna today say the stage is set for all the states in the region to key into it.
You are aware of the many attempts to find lasting solutions to the incessant farmer-herder clashes, cattle rustling, and associated criminalities such as banditry, kidnapping, among others. As a region that holds a comparative advantage in livestock management as an economic and sociocultural vocation, we need to come up with a common front on how to synergize and draw from the funds available for the program and ensure that we derive maximum benefits for our people.
Although the resolution of the meeting might sound unanimous, the governor of Benue State, Samuel Otom, who was represented at the meeting by his deputy, has a contrary opinion, while his Zamfara state counterpart gives his backing.
Whichever state that has keyed into the program will have it as its own program. In other words, it's going to be owned by the state, even if some help regarding the funding and all that is going to come from the federal government.
My state doesn't have conflict now because I have resolved all the issues. That was my reason of establishing the 3 pilot scheme of Ruga scheme, and we have no problem with them for the state as at now.
As a region made up of 19 states that have their respective local laws on livestock management, some of the stakeholders are watching keenly to see the outcome of the livestock transformation plan in the 7 pilot states.
Meanwhile, the Kano state government says it's making progress with its rural grazing area settlement scheme, with the award of a contract to develop a grazing ground and other security supports to ensure its success. Governor Ganduje announced this during a visit to the Falgore forest area where the settlement is to be sited. Now, he was shown the area previously known to be a hideout for criminals, but now serves as a training base. Our correspondent Idris Jibrin reports.
It's the first, and going by the military sources, it certainly will not be the last military exercise in Falgore Forest in Kano State, which shares a border with the notorious Sambisa Forest in Borno State, known as the hideout of Boko Haram insurgents, which has been the target of the airstrike by Operation Green Sweep 3 of the Nigerian Air Force. A few months ago, this was a no-go area to Kano residents or visitors passing through, following reported cases of armed robbery, kidnapping, cattle rustling, and other related criminal activities.
We have awarded a contract of over 300 million naira to provide some dormitories, to provide some offices, to provide some facilities, and also grazing ground, so that the military will continue conducting exercise here, and I'm sure that the bandits will not be able to inhabit this forest.
Once a criminal hideout, it's now a military training ground, a move that has helped improve security in Kano.
It has been observed that ever since Depot Nigeria started conducting exercises of such magnitude in this general area, it has improved the security situation of Falgore Forest and environment tremendously.
More than just protecting lives and property, the Nigerian Army hopes to help improve the health of those it's protecting, inviting the Kano State Governor to flag off its medical outreach for residents in Dogwa and Tudunwada local government areas of the state, in the heart of the Falgore Forest. Meanwhile, Governor Ganduje's security commitment and the establishment of Ruga settlement appears to be becoming a reality, as he is escorted inside the forest to see the level of progress made by these officers. Governor Abdullahi Ganduje is here to inspect the 71 first regular intake of the Nigerian Army, who just graduated from this camp. It is expected that the Kano State Government Ruga settlement program will pick up in earnest. Idris Jibrin, Channels Television News.
And staying with security in the north, the International Committee of the Red Cross says 22,000 Nigerians have been reported missing during a decade of conflict in the northeast. The organization says it's the highest number of missing persons registered in any country. Nearly 60% are said to be minors at the time they went missing, meaning thousands of parents don't know where their children are and if they're alive or dead. The ICRC president met with families that have been affected by conflict in Maiduguri and Monguno, many of whom have missing relatives. The ICRC says it's solved 367 cases since 2013, but there's a lot more to be done.
My visit this time brought me to Maiduguri, Monguno, for 2 days afterwards in Abuja to conversations with President Buhari and several of his ministers, and to several public events with regard to the situations in the northeast. As I mentioned, ICRC is responding in particular in the northeast, but also in other parts of Nigeria, to situations of violence and displacements of populations. Millions of people are affected still by the cycle of violence and violations of international humanitarian law. I have visited displacement camps, and my assessment is that there is still a lot to do between the needs, the basic needs in water, health, shelter, sanitation of populations displaced, but also more psychological needs of people. Families are missing their relatives. We have a caseload of more than 22,000 open cases today of people missing one or several family members. ICRC is engaging for the respect of international humanitarian law with all sides in that conflict, and in that sense I had also positive and very constructive discussions with the governor in Borno and also Borno State, but also with President Buhari. I think we all agree that more has to be done.
Well, let's take another look at the Northern Governor's emergency meeting today. I'm being joined live from Abuja by a member of the 8th National Assembly and a human rights activist, Senator Shehu Sani. Thanks a lot for joining us on the News at 10.
Thank you for having me.
When the governors met in Kaduna earlier today, one of the resolutions was to revamp agricultural development. Then you look at what's going on in the region, the northeast, the northwest. How easy will that be?
Well, it's a good initiative. It is a priority, and it is important and significant to the economy of northern Nigeria. But you cannot be talking about revamping agriculture at this time with this pervasive insecurity that exists in northwest and the northeastern part of the country. They are intertwined. You have to restore order, peace. The security apparatus of the state must take control of the ungoverned spaces as it exists now. If not, the idea of reviving any form of agriculture is simply a mirage.
And what do you think of the figures coming in from the Red Cross? The figures, the amount of people, children, minors that are missing, and how worried are you about that?
Well, the report is factual, and not just that organizations, but other groups have made similar reports. The issue of insecurity in northern Nigeria has led to so many things, and one of which is what was reflected in that report. The displacement of people, missing children, children killed in combat, and these are all issues associated with the conflict, and if they must be addressed, we have to go to the root of the problem by bringing an end to the banditry as it exists in the northwestern part of Nigeria, and also align ourselves with nations around the northeastern part of Nigeria to finally annihilate the insurgency.
Yes, looking at the resolutions that were adopted today, let's come back to the meeting today. They did agree that they would adopt the federal government's livestock transformation plan. That's what it's called. But then you find that some governors have already started implementing the Ruga scheme, and we're told it's different. And can you distinguish one from the other?
The idea of the Ruga scheme, once there is a hospitable and habitable environment for it, as it is in Niger State, Sokoto and Kebbi and Kano State, there is no problem with that. But we will have a problem if the federal government will impose it on all the 36 states and say this must be done. And if you will have a Ruga system, it can only flourish in a community that is accommodating. You cannot simply impose Ruga on other people and say it must function. But in this case, the northern states, states that are amenable to the idea, can actually establish Ruga if that will address the problem of migration and the violence that associated with it.
Yeah, but when you look at the north, the entire region. Now let's go to the north central. We've talked about the east and the west. Do you think the north of today is as united as the north of yesterday was in terms of finding a lasting solution to the problems when you look at the north central now quickly?
It is factual that the north is no more that monolithic region as we used to know. Politics have come in. There is a widening and chasm that exists between religious beliefs, faiths, and ethnic violence as it is in the Tiv Jukun and the crisis in Kaduna and other states. These are all issues that northern state governors need to sit down and address. And it is unfortunate that this has been left over the years to reach to this point. And if we are going to have peace in the whole of Nigeria, certainly there should be peace in northern part of Nigeria. But most importantly now, what is most challenging is the banditry in the western part of Nigeria. And the governor of Zamfara and Katsina State are making points and achieving results. But that is temporary. They are sitting down with the bandits, pacifying them, and in some cases possibly paying them but not be sustained. There must be a strategy to restore order and end banditry. And at the same time, the North must come together and address its conflicting ethnic and religious crisis and violence.
All right, member of the 8th National Assembly and human rights activist, Senator Sheikh Husani, thanks for joining us on the News at 10 tonight.
Thank you for having me.
And in part 2 of the break, Federal High Court upholds Governor Godwin Obaseki's proclamation to Edo State Assembly, insists governor does not take directives from the National Assembly. That's in a moment. Just stay with us.